Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are with Tunisia Ali of Tunisia's Locks, Beauty Tips and Potpourri. And today we are talking about 50 facts about Sisterlocks. Goodness knows there's so many more than that, but I thought I would focus on 50. And so this is part one of that video. I will have another one right after this where you can watch the second half, the second 25. I have had my locks now for 7.5 years, almost 7.5 years. And it's been a beautiful journey. I have learned a heck of a lot along the way. Experienced all sorts of issues with my locks. My hair did not lock easily. And even if I were to show you what I pulled out of my hair last night as I went through and redid some of the thick ends that will no longer fit through my needles when I retie, you would be shocked. I still maintain my hair. Okay, so I just want to go into some of the basic facts and some of the things that I found were important to me as I evolved through my Sisterlocks journey, which again, as I say, has been beautiful, wonderful. Number one is Sisterlocks is the most expensive lock style out there, which I'm sure most of you know. When I was getting my locks, the rate was on average between $450 and $800 for an install. Average, I'm saying, or it was common. Nowadays, you can pay anywhere from $600 to $2,000 and higher. So a lot has changed. Lock fact number two. You will need to expect to get your Sisterlocks retightened on average every 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I hear a lot of ladies talking about 4 weeks. I can't even imagine going every 4 weeks to get them retightened, but I think especially in the beginning, you need to do what your loctician tells you to do. I started out with 8 weeks in the beginning, and the one time that I went to 10 weeks, I did pay the price. I had some knots in my hair from the way that the roots compacted. Although it did eventually resolve and compress, I was very upset because I don't think I was more than 6 months into my journey, and I could see around the front of my hair especially, which is where the knotting took place. But now I go every 11 weeks very easily with no problems at all. And I wouldn't do any less than 10 to 11 weeks anyway. And my locticians aren't the type that complain about the length. I remember one time I was doing a lot of vitamins. My hair got much longer than normal rate of growth, and the normal rate of growth. And so as a result, no one said to me, even though it took an extra 45 minutes, no one said to me, oh, you need to pay more. Number three, you do not have to listen to everything your loctician tells you as the gospel. Now, I'm not saying this to be irresponsible. What I'm saying is in the beginning, just like when we had children and we all went out and bought that book about how to have your first baby with the lady sitting in the chair, the guy who did the chicken soup for your soul book, you didn't veer from the path. You thought it was the gospel. They are giving you their feedback based on their experiences with their clients, and you will find that varies from loctician to loctician, and that is the truth. For example, most locticians will tell you not to use any oil. A lot of them will, but my loctician, she put it in my hair the first day she did them. And even though I was a little skeptical, I found it not to be an issue. So, in the beginning, do the basics that they tell you to do and follow it like the gospel. Braid and band, do your reties and all that. But when it comes down to some other things, you may want to shop some different opinions or listen to your gut. Listen to your intuition. I'm really big on that. But this is an investment, so although you do not have to listen to your loctician as it relates to every single thing, it can't hurt to be on point with some of the more major pieces that are very important to your investment. Number four, braiding and banding is serious business. You need to braid and band. I do not care what anyone says. Let that be one of the hallmarks of your routine. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't need to braid and band. I still do it now just for ease of washing in most cases because my hair gets so thick and it still tends to swell when I wash it, and I'm 7 years in. So make sure you do that. Lock fact number 5, you will get lint. I battle lint. Pull out my sword. Back up against back. 360 degrees of fighting power. I deal with lint. And right now, see, I don't know, you can't see it, but you're going to have lint. Because you're in a world where there's life and there's all sorts of particles in the environment. And just because you can't see them doesn't mean your hair is not going to pick them up. I don't care if you sleep with a satin cat. I don't care if you brush your hair every day. You're going to pick up lint, so you want to be on top of that on a regular basis. Yesterday I was doing another lint. I don't know what you want to call it. I was on one of my lint OCD things, and you'd be surprised what I pulled out. So be prepared for the lint. It's not going to be bad if you maintain it, but I do feel like it's something that you need to be aware of. You can't just let these locks sit and think that all will be well, because it won't. Okay? Number 6, Sisterlock fact. The Sisterlocks website is not always up to date. Go, Albie, go. What this means is the burden of responsibility is on you to find and research your locticians adequately. The site is not always updated, meaning you will find a lot of names on there, or you will frequently find names on there, and the locticians may no longer be doing hair, or the numbers may be disconnected. By the same token, do your research. Just because someone's name is on the site does not mean that that person may be ideal for you. And that brings me to point 7. Just because a loctician is on the Sisterlocks site does not mean that that individual is a diehard Sisterlock fan, nor does it mean that that individual will do a good job, nor does it mean that that individual is thorough, or that that individual is without fault. Just like any other service that you're getting ready to invest in, buyer beware. You want to approach this with a positive mindset, but you want to remember that it's up to you to get the proof, to see previous clients, to ask for samples of their work. Maybe even some of them will allow you to come into the shop and observe 20-30 minutes of their retightening, or the 20 to 30 minutes of an install. You never know if you don't ask. This is important. I'm wondering if you all saw that, are watching this, and I did a lot of shaking and lint proofing yesterday. I'm wondering if you're just seeing some of this. I have a lot in here. Next, number 8. I feel, and this is what my loctician says, and I believe this to some extent, mostly, you are better off with a loctician who is also a cosmetologist, or someone, maybe not a cosmetologist, someone who is experienced with natural hair. Because this is a natural hairstyle, and there are just some basics that are going to be related to natural hair, irregardless of if it's Sisterlocks or not. And that's one of the things my loctician brought up when I was discussing the ambassador certification and some other things that I had come across dealing with you ladies on the site and learning from you all. You guys have taught me a lot. That was a couple things she mentioned, and she said, a lot of times you have people who don't have any experience with hair at all, natural hair in particular. And so when it comes down to advising clients, they may advise you to do some things that just typically are not aligned with natural hair care to begin with. Let me get this off the floor. Excuse me. Just as you can see, I'm using these sponge rollers, and they did a phenomenal job. And this is the easiest rolling experience ever that you will encounter. It's so much easier, and I am a pipe cleaner fanatic. You can see I only use those when I got too lazy at the end 3 places. But these look really, really good. They really, really do. Next, let's talk about number 9. You will need a backup loctician. You may love the one that you have, and I hope that you do, but always have a backup. Anything can happen. You could be traveling. That person could be unavailable. for a booking. Anything could happen. It's good to, after the first few months, to begin to look for a backup. And if you find a backup periodically, especially if you're further in your journey, like after the first few years, periodically use that person just to kind of keep them in the loop, because you do have some locticians who, if you're not regular, they don't want to just do drop-ins. And so I pretty much like to work with both of my locticians, and I like to see them both. If I don't alternate every other time, I'll do one now, maybe 2 or 3 times in a row, and then I'll go with the other one. I like to do that. I like both of them tremendously. I get different results with each one. So that's something that you definitely want to consider. Number 10, you can still dye. Okay. I've been dyeing now. I guess I'm over 2.5 years of dyeing consistently. No problems there. Hair's a little drier than normal. I probably want to stop some of the dyeing. I'm going to try to stop, but with the spring coming. And I'm a butterfly. I just don't know. And I love color. But I may take a break from it. I had a lady that was asking me, please do some videos on your hairstyles. And I don't see them. They're very simplistic. But I won't take for granted that it is easy or not. And I'm just going to just show, as I'm doing this, how some of what I do with my hair to pull it off my face. I tend to keep it off my face. I use these little pipe cleaners that I've cut into small pieces to hold my hair. So anyway, yes, you can still dye. Number 11, no two heads look alike. That may sound obvious. It may sound like duh, but it's true. Each person has a different texture, different length, different curl pattern. It's so important that you not judge your journey by how someone else's locks look. And just because you see someone out in the street, don't think that your locks are going to look the same way. Barring any differences in the size of the lock, I don't like this, the size of the lock, the density of your hair, and the color and things like that, there are still going to be some differences. My hair, for example, took forever to lock. And I still have some open ends, which you know that I like. But, and I went through last night and I did about 15 locks. I thinned out the ends because I find I get these thick ends. And then it's so different than the way this is. And that's because I've taken them out over time because they were getting thick and they've expanded, and I have to do it again so that my ends look even. But some people's hair locks uniformly on its own. Mine did not do that. And for me to have had these for so many years, clearly it just wasn't going to happen. So there are certain things that I do to mine so that I have a more uniform look. That works for me. Everybody doesn't have to do that. So it just depends on what your particular situation is. The other thing I wanted to mention in 12, fact number 12, is that there are people who do the Sisterlocks, but they are not advocates of Sisterlocks in the sense that, and that's important really. I am a fan of Sisterlocks. I love the style. I'm not a fan of some of the practices and some of the controversy around certain things, whether it's pricing or certain people not being able to venture outside of Sisterlocks to try other things or to introduce their peeps to some of their ways that they've been creative with doing locks without being sued or shut down. That's a controversial, complicated topic, and there are two sides, and I do feel like I can see both sides. So I'm not making a blanket statement one way or the other about some of the things that I find are a little questionable. But what I'm saying is, if you invest in this style, you do want someone who is behind the brand to the extent that they're not going to come to you a few months into your journey saying to you, do you want to just continue to palm roll? Or can we use this other tool on your hair as we do your retightenings? Now, if I choose to pick up a different tool, that's my business. It's my hair. But if I'm paying someone who's representing the brand, then I want them to represent the brand. I want them to do the grid the way it's supposed to be done and all of that good stuff. So that part is really important. Number 13, watch out for doing reties too frequently. I'm not sure what reties require every 4 weeks, and that's a bit of a concern to me, but because I'm not knowledgeable enough about it, I don't want to go out on a limb and appear to be ignorant and uninformed. But for me, a retie every 4 weeks, just because of, depending upon who's doing it as well and how tender they are, that's a lot of pulling on your hair every 4 weeks. And just due to some research and some personal experiences, I feel like that could affect your follicles, and that could actually harm your hair over a long period of time. And I don't know that after a certain phase in your journey that's required. I can see that in the first year perhaps, but I'm wondering every 4 weeks, that's something that I would would question that, or I would try to stretch that out just a bit. Then again, I know some people's hair has such a curl pattern that it can begin to tangle. In those cases, I would say that you really just treat your hair like a baby and you go through one by one at about 3 to 4 weeks, and you separate them very gently. But the retightenings that frequently, I think at some point long term may contribute to some type of traction alopecia or something of that nature. So that's just a common sense kind of thing that I believe in. Number 14, you need to avoid conditioners and heavy products on your hair that sometimes people use for moisturizing. Very important. Don't overdo those. It's going to contribute to buildup. It will attract more lint. Even if you're using natural products, clearly you would prefer to use jojoba oil to, say, castor oil, because you know it's going to leave a residue. It's going to be too thick for your hair. And unless you're really washing your hair frequently, which I don't recommend, that's something you want to be careful about. Also, I think in my experience, most sisters are going to need something on their scalp. I'm getting ready to experiment very shortly with not putting any of my famous Miracle Grow products on my hair for about the next couple of months. I'm not sure how I'm going to fare, but since I've never been without oil, because I felt my scalp needed it, and obviously my loctician did, I just want to see what this story is about, what comes up off your scalp when you don't use oils and things for a while. I'm going to see how long I can actually go without putting any oils on my hair. But I feel like most people need something on their scalp, even if it's nothing more than a water spray or a little bit of sea breeze or witch hazel or some essential oil when the scalp becomes irritated or extremely dry. But like I said, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm going to try. I don't like my hair looking dry, which is something I probably am going to not like. But I do want to see if I notice any differences with lint, if I notice any differences with my scalp when I'm not using any oils at all. So stay tuned for that. I plan to make another video about that. Number 16. You can use oil. Now, I say that, and the caveat is, every head is not the same. I used oil from day one. My loctician put it on my hair after she retightened my locks. And I remember being like, we're not supposed to be using oils, are we? Now I know what she says about that, because I've come back years later after starting the channel and learning from you guys what her view was on that. In the beginning, I just kind of took her word for it and I prayed. Being with my hair being a little soft too, I was thinking, it's going to slip, this, that. But my hair needed oil. I didn't like a dry look in my scalp, so it worked fine for me. Some of you may need to dilute the oil with 3 parts water and shake it up and just moisturize that way. Some of you may need to just go in with just a tiny bit. I mean, I would take mine and just with the nozzle and then just bring it all the way down to the ends. I didn't have issues. Any slippage I had that happened up here still happens now. And that's always been the case because this part of my hair is shorter, so I don't really credit it to that. Next, 17. You can add fragranced oils to your hair if you like certain scents and things, provided you still wash your hair and you make sure those oil smells don't become rancid. And what I mean are, the oils like Egyptian musk or oils you may get from some of the international stores. Is one of my favorite oils, Bahur, comes out of Saudi and out of Dubai, and occasionally I will mix that with my coconut oil and water spray, and I will put that in my hair, and it smells really good. So you can do those things, but again, you want to do it lightly, and you want to do it you don't want to abuse it. So if you had the oil and you were doing like this and you just wanted to pat down, you're going out for the evening like this, they work very well. Number 18, the what did I have here? I have the longer that you have your locks in, the easier they become to style, and the more susceptible your hair is to not, folding when you style. I say that because I feel too early on, too much styling is not good for the locks. We hear that from the locticians, and that's the advice that you get. But a lot of times people who are getting their locks early on, they don't really heed that. And I think it's really important because the lock is forming, and unless you don't do it, you're not going to see the ill effects, or you may not necessarily attribute why your locks look the way they do to the early styling. And by that time that you realize that, you're well into your journey and it could be too late. So my advice is, hair is going to respond a lot better to styling stresses when you're further along in your journey. Resist the braid outs, the Bantu knots, and things of that nature that you may be encouraged to do, or that you may be lured and desire to do simply because you want a different style, because your hair you're trying to get used to the awkward stage. If anything, use bobby pin to just kind of pin it back, or use something like this to sort of pin it back, or to give yourself some variation in style. But resist the curling, straightening, and things of that nature. Be very, very, very careful. Number 19, your hair will go through 3 stages primarily 3 stages when you are in your lock journey, and you should know what to associate with each stage. Knowing what stage you're in will also help you to surrender to that stage and to learn to be patient. The first stage is going to be your baby locks. That's when you first get them in, and they're all curly and you look like a plucked chicken. And even there is no, how normally when you get a retightening, after 3 or 4 weeks of retightening, you don't look like a plucked chicken unless somebody does this. But when you first get your locks installed and they're baby locks, you're a plucked chicken all the time. You're a plucked chicken all the time. And that's the stage, yuck. So your hair is kind of starting to shrink. You may have little curls in it that are natural. Your ends may still be curly, or if you had straight ends to begin with, or you had permed ends, your ends are going to look like that. It's the stage where you want to love your locks, and you love the fact that you have them in, but you probably are more in love with the fact that you have them in than you are with the way they look. And then fact number 20 is the teenage stage. You will have a transitional period, which we call the teenage stage. And the teenage stage, when the teenage stage comes, granted, you're moving out of the baby stage. You're not as much of a plucked chicken in between retightenings. You are starting to get comfortable with your locks and having them. You're starting to feel really good about them, but then they're rebelling against you, and they're rebelling against the locking process, just like children rebel against their parents, which is why we call them teenagers. This stage is maddening. This is the stage where you get the bulging, and you get all the crazy stuff that I spent last night still maintaining my hair from, and I'm 7 years in. You get the fat ends that people tell you to leave alone. Sometimes you get the little balls that drop. They start looking different. Each of them has their own rebellious personality. This is a stage that you're going to be in for quite some time. Try to embrace it. try to do what you can. By this time, I hope you have a really good relationship with your loctician, because you are likely going to have a lot of questions. I hope that you belong to a sort of a Sisterlocks support group where you can get advice from, because this was like the worst stage for me ever, because you could pick up my hair, and I gotta tell you, with the exception of the small ones here, which were always pretty much perfect and thin, these jokers up in here did all kind of stuff, and I was constantly in my head. I was kind of taking them out. I was redoing some stuff. I was doing all kinds of things. I didn't like the way they looked, and they were locking up in a way that to me was not going to look good down the road. I was really looking for uniformity. If I could have had all of my locks this size, I probably would have preferred that. I'm not suggesting that you do that. That was due to my impatience. This may be one that was bigger. Yeah, this is one that I thinned out some. This is one of my thicker ones, but it's nothing compared to some of the other ones, which were really, really bad. Even I did a couple of these last night, finally, after a long time, that were really uneven. I had like a fat piece here and a fat piece down here. And so I got the fat piece down here off. See if I can find one for you that represents what I'm talking about. I did really good. I might have gotten the last of the Mohicans out last night. This is an example of one, not the worst case, but you can see how fat this is, right? You see this? Now, me seeing that this is just a thicker lock, being that it's uniform, I'm going to probably leave it alone, because this just happens to be a thicker lock. But I've had them where it's been a thinner lock and it's been thick like this, or double this on the end. And then if I needed to retighten the front of my hair, I could barely get the lock through the eye of the needle. And that to me means that the base is going to be thin. And when that thick piece goes through, it's going to rip the base, or it's going to harm or traumatize my little follicles, my little scalp, little root area. So I don't care what anybody says. If it's too thick to go through the eye of the needle, it's definitely too thick to go through a small piece of hair up here in the finer part of my hair. And I'm not going to traumatize my hair that way and then be bald in that area later. So I make those decisions. Cotton, is that cotton? Oh my, what is this, ladies? What is this? We have to mark this when we have something there. Okay, so then you go through 22, the mature stage. The mature stage is where you start to really perceive the length. The length is always there. It's always growing. But in the mature stage, they kind of drop. Then when the hair starts to grow, it pretty much grows into a lock formation without all of the teenage rebellion and so forth. The locks are mature now. You're able to style them more. They hold styles better. They compress very well. Then they start to look like almost very thin strands of hair. They start to really be beautiful at this stage. And to me, the perception of length is magnified. You notice the growth so much more because there's less shrinkage overall. So this is a wonderful stage to be in. Typically, I think for most people, it happens around 5 years. For others, it can happen a little bit earlier than that. Number 23. Another important lock fact, sister lock fact is watch out for too frequent washings. I do believe it is possible to wash your locks too much and to dry them out and to cause unnecessary slippage early on and other problems, especially if you're not braiding and banding. Even if you are, you don't have to wash the locks unnecessarily. I don't wash my locks that much. I'm just going to tell you. And I don't think I'm paying for that in any particular way. My locks are very healthy. My scalp is extremely healthy. I'm not having flaking or anything like that. I do maintain my hair. I brush it and I do a few other things, but I don't overwash, and I think I've benefited from that. I know that I haven't suffered. There's no place in my hair where my locks are thinning. There's no place in my hair where my scalp is not healthy. And I have been dyeing, so I have put a lot of extra styling stress in terms of color on my hair. And I've seen people who've colored, and I've seen people who've lost the thickness and the length of their hair. So I think it has to do with what I do to maintain my hair in terms of the shampoo that I make, my synergistic blend of essential oils that I use that I believe have contributed to the health and growth of my hair, and as well my shampoo regimen. The fact that I don't wash that often. For me, I may wash every 4 weeks. Let's be honest. On average, we're looking at every 4 weeks. And then fact 24. When you have Sisterlocks, the upkeep is still regular. You do have to do some work. You cannot be lazy. Some people think this is a style that you just need to go and maintain every 6 to 8 weeks for your retightening, and that's the end of it. You do have to do some maintenance and upkeep with your hair. It is not a lazy hairstyle. It's an easy hairstyle. It's a hairstyle where you always have a great hair day, but it does require a little bit of effort. But the effort is fun because you are looking at these beautiful locks every day. They are low maintenance. Although there's upkeep, they are low maintenance. So it is something that you will hopefully enjoy. And then last but not least is, as I mentioned this a little bit early on, I'm going to mention it in a different way now. With Sisterlocks, you want to avoid infrequent reties. What I mean is this. Whatever your schedule is for retightening in the first few years, stick to that schedule. Now, if you're going every 4 to 6 weeks in the beginning, perhaps you don't need to go every 4 to 5, 6 weeks as you get after you exceed the first year. But whatever the schedule is, as you get to know your hair better and you see at what point it tangles and at what point you may have some marrying of locks, you and your loctician will make that mutual decision together. But you want to avoid infrequent reties that can happen for a lot of reasons. Oftentimes, people will run into a financial situation where they miss reties. I would say before you miss reties, in the beginning especially, and I'm talking about the first few years in this particular case, you would do better to begin to retighten your own hair, especially in certain spots where it can become a real issue. Not getting your reties on time. So my point is, watch out for infrequent reties. Make sure that you get your reties on schedule. If you run into financial situation, get your little plastic needle out, or your nappy lock tool, or your crochet tool, and learn how to do it and take the time to do it rather than go week after week after week without doing your retie. It's very, very important. Okay, your grid can become messed up, your hair can break, or your locks can thin, your locks can marry. You will sometimes have a thickness at your root base that when you try to retie, you'll end up with a fat knot or a fat mass of matted hair in between where you locked and where the new locking pattern is and where the last one stopped. That's what happened to me when I tried to go 10 weeks during my first year. I paid the price for that and never let it happen again, because these things, I said, they better look good all the time because I paid good money for these. So anyway, you with Tunisia Ali. This was part 1 of the 50 Sisterlock facts. I'm going to do the second video in just a little bit on the second set of 50 facts, or the 26 through 50. I hope that you found something that makes sense to you, that resonated with you. I hope that if you're new to the Sisterlocks brand or the Microlocks brand, that there's something in the video that you connected with that can change or influence how you may be doing something with your hair for the better. Lots of love, peace, happiness, light, and laughter to everyone. You're with Tunisia Ali. Namaste, lovely, beautiful souls, my sisters in kindred spirit and connection. Have a beautiful day. It is Sunday, the day of the Super Bowl, and the sun is shining And life is good and life is beautiful, whether you watch the Super Bowl or not. Have a wonderful day.